Juliette Vance's first customer of the day walked in at 6:30 in the morning, wearing a tailored navy coat, sunglasses despite the early hour, and the kind of presence that made her pause mid-scone glaze. She blinked once, twice, then set the tray down and smiled. Morning. "You're early." "So are you," he said, voice low and smooth. He slid his sunglasses off, revealing striking green eyes that made her forget how cold the bakery usually was before sunrise. "Are those fresh?" "Just came out of the oven," she replied, brushing flour off her apron. "Scones, muffins, and the cinnamon rolls are still warm." "I'll take all of them," she blinked. "All?" He gave a half nod, glancing at the pastry case. "One of each, and a black coffee if you've got it." Juliette grabbed a box and started loading it, glancing back at him. "You feeding a football team?" Something like that. He looked around the bakery walls, painted soft cream, copper lights above the counter, and a chalkboard menu she'd handwritten herself last night. "This place yours?" "Yeah, opened it 6 months ago." "Still figuring out if I'm clinically insane or just stubborn." He smiled, just a flicker. "I'd say both are required for owning a business." Juliette handed him the box, then poured his coffee into a to-go cup. He passed her a black card, sleek and metal, and she paused, eyebrows raised. It didn't even have numbers on it. We don't usually run it," he said gently. She did, and when the receipt printed, she read the name, Sebastian Dorne. He caught her looking. "Thanks, Juliette," he said, reading her name off her apron. "I'll be back tomorrow." And then he walked out, leaving the scent of expensive cologne and the soft jingle of the bell above the door echoing behind him. He came back the next day. And the day after that. Always early, always alone, always dressed like a man who had a driver waiting outside. He ordered different things, blueberry muffins one day, croissants the next, but always sat at the corner table for at least 15 minutes before leaving. By the 5th morning, Juliette leaned across the counter and asked, "All right. Who are you really?" He looked up from his coffee, brows raised. "What do you mean? You come in here dressed like you've stepped out of a GQ cover shoot, you order an unreasonable amount of pastries, and you tip like money means nothing. What's the deal? You a spy? A secret food critic?" He smiled, actually smiled this time. "What if I said I just like your scones? Then I'd say you're avoiding the question." He stood, picked up his coffee, and said, "Maybe I'll tell you next week." Juliette didn't expect him to keep showing up, but he did, for 3 weeks straight. One morning, while she was hauling a 50-pound flour bag out of the back, she heard the bell and called out without looking, "We're not open yet, 5 more minutes." "I'll wait." She turned. Sebastian stood there, coat unbuttoned, hair damp from the rain. He looked less polished today. His tie was gone, and his shirt sleeves were rolled up. "Rough morning?" she asked, wiping her hands on a towel. He sighed. "You could say that. Sit." "I'll get the coffee started." He watched her move behind the counter, then said, "I own Dorne Group." She paused mid-pour. "Dorne Group, as in the skyscraper downtown and the tech firm, the real estate development company, and a couple other things," he added. "I'm not supposed to say I'm a millionaire, but I am." Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "You're kidding." "I'm not." "Why would a millionaire come to my hole-in-the-wall bakery at dawn?" He looked at her, something softer in his eyes now. "Because it's quiet here and it feels real." She stared at him, the hum of the espresso machine filling the silence. "I thought you were just a weird guy with too much money and no friends." "I wouldn't say that's entirely wrong." She laughed, and to her surprise, he did too. That Saturday, he showed up in a charcoal suit and asked, "What are you doing tonight?" "Working," she said, motioning to the stack of cake orders behind the counter. After that, she eyed him. "Why? I'd like to take you to dinner." Juliette blinked. "Like a date." His voice was calm. "Yeah, like a date." She stared for a beat too long. "I don't own heels." "I own a driver," he replied. "You won't have to walk." That night, Juliette found herself in the back of a sleek black car, watching the city lights blur past. Sebastian sat beside her, hands clasped, glancing over only once to ask, "You okay?" "Nervous," she admitted. "I'm used to smells like vanilla extract and yeast. Not this. You look good in both." The restaurant was the kind with gold fixtures and a wine list thicker than a Bible. But Sebastian didn't act like he belonged there. He leaned in close, made her laugh with dry jokes, and never once looked at his phone. "I'm not used to feeling this normal," he said quietly as dessert arrived, Juliette blinked. Normal, with you, yeah. She didn't know what to say to that. So she reached across the table and took his hand. And just like that, something shifted. 2 weeks later, he walked into the bakery at 6 a.m. holding a small white box. Juliette raised a brow. Did you bring me pastries now? He opened it. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet with a tiny pastry charm. Aquasa, thought it might match your apron, he said. She blinked, heart thudding. Sebastian, I know it's early, he said, stepping closer, but I'm not good at pretending I don't want something. She swallowed. And what exactly do you want? You. The air between them pulsed. She looked up at him, eyes wide. I don't know how to date someone like you. I'm not asking you to date a millionaire, he said. I'm asking you to date me. And for the first time, she didn't feel like the girl who smelled like yeast and woke up at 4 a.m. every day. She felt like the woman he saw someone worth choosing. Juliette whispered, okay. And when he kissed her, right there in her flour-dusted bakery, she kissed him back like she'd been waiting for it all her life. Juliette hadn't known what it meant to have someone like Sebastian in her life until he started showing up after hours, when the bakery was closed and the ovens were cooling, offering to carry crates to the back or wash bowls while she prepped dough for the next day. I've never needed anything in my life, he said one night, rolling up his sleeves as she handed him a lump of dough. You'll hate it, she warned, wiping flour from her cheek with her wrist. It's repetitive, exhausting, and you don't get to see the results for hours. Sounds like most of my meetings, she laughed, handing him another handful. Use the heel of your hand, no like this. He followed her lead without complaint, awkward but determined. For someone who probably never had to do anything manual in years, he didn't flinch at the effort. You don't have to prove anything, she said as they worked side by side. I'm not, he replied. I like seeing what it takes to make something real. She didn't know what to say to that, so she changed the subject. What did you do before you owned half the city? I was broke, he answered without hesitation. My father died young. Left us with nothing but debt and a warehouse full of rusted equipment. I started flipping it, selling parts. One deal led to another. She stopped kneading. You built everything from a scrapyard. I built everything because I didn't want to end up like him. Juliette didn't push. She pressed the dough into a neat ball and slid it into a bowl for proofing. Well, you've made it, though I can't say your kneading skills would get you hired here. He cracked a rare grin. Then I'll stick to being your unpaid assistant. Later, when they sat on flour bags drinking lukewarm tea, she looked at him differently. Not as the man in the tailored coat who handed over mysterious credit cards, but as someone who had clawed his way up from nothing. Do you miss it? She asked quietly. What? Being anonymous. Not having people treat you like you're something you built instead of who you are. He didn't answer immediately. Sometimes I wonder what it'd feel like to walk into a room and not be calculated. Juliette set her mug down. You don't have to do that here. I know. And in that moment, with the hum of the refrigerator and the distant tick of the wall clock, the space between them shifted again. The next morning, she found a new espresso machine on the counter. Her old one had been sputtering for weeks, but she hadn't mentioned it aloud. Sebastian leaned against the doorframe, watching her reaction. I figured your mornings deserved better fuel. She narrowed her eyes. That's not a small gift, I know. I didn't ask for it. You didn't have to. Juliette folded her arms. You can't just fix things by buying them. I'm not trying to fix anything. Then what are you doing? Trying to make your life easier. I thought that was allowed. She looked at the machine, gleaming and sleek, then back at him. Don't make this a habit. I won't, he said, unless you make breaking rules a habit too. That night, she invited him to the rooftop above the bakery. There wasn't much up there, just a few mismatched chairs and a string of lights she'd hung on a whim, but he didn't seem to mind. You've got a view of the entire block. Yeah, she said, handing him a beer, including the diner that steals my muffin ideas. He took a sip and leaned back. I don't think I've ever been on a roof that didn't require a security code, Juliette grinned. Well, this one just requires a stubborn ladder and a little trust. He looked over at her. You're letting me in. I haven't decided yet. Liar, he said softly. She didn't respond. Instead, she watched the city lights flicker in the distance. I always thought I'd leave this neighborhood one day, go somewhere bigger, but something about this place keeps pulling me back. You belong here, she turned to him. How do you know? Because this rooftop feels like you. Real and unpolished and honest. She didn't kiss him then. She wanted to, but something about the way he said it made her pause, like he was giving her something she wasn't ready to take. The next week, he disappeared, no calls, no morning visits, no explanations. She waited. 1 day, 2. By the 4th, she was pacing the kitchen, burning a batch of brownies. On the 5th, she picked up her phone, stared at the blank screen, then threw it face down on the counter. It wasn't until the 6th day that he walked in, dressed like nothing had happened. "You're alive," she said flatly. "I had to leave," he said simply. "No message." "I couldn't," her chest tightened. "Was it something I did?" "No," he stepped closer. "It was something I had to take care of, my mother's estate. It's complicated." Juliette crossed her arms. "You could have said that. I didn't want to drag you into it. You already did." He looked at her then, really looked at her. "I've never had to explain myself to anyone, not in years. I forgot what it feels like to owe someone honesty." "Then maybe you're not ready for this." He stepped forward. "I am. I just didn't expect to care this much this fast." Juliette didn't move. "I built this place from nothing, just like you. And I don't need someone to rescue me with espresso machines or rooftop compliments. I need someone who shows up. I will. Then prove it." He didn't say anything more. He just pulled out a folded page from his coat pocket, an old flyer of hers from when she opened the bakery, now creased and smudged. "I kept this," he said, "because it reminded me what starting over looks like." She stared at it, her throat tight. Sebastian placed it on the counter and whispered, "I'm not walking away. Not unless you ask me to." She didn't. She couldn't, not when he was finally starting to feel like home. Juliette didn't expect him to show up at closing time. The bakery was mostly dark, save for the glow of the overhead bulbs above the prep counter. She was elbow-deep in lemon zest and butter, prepping dough for the morning tartlets, when the bell jingled and Sebastian stepped inside, his coat damp from the light drizzle clinging to the sidewalks outside. "You're late," she said, not looking up from the metal bowl. "You didn't tell me to come." She wiped her hands on a towel, finally glancing his way. "Didn't think I needed to anymore." He stepped closer, setting something down on the counter, a paper bag with a logo she didn't recognize, something understated but clearly expensive. "What's that?" she asked. "Something you wouldn't buy for yourself." She raised an eyebrow. "That could be anything, really." He didn't smile. "Open it." Inside was a pair of kitchen shoes. Not heels, not anything sparkly, just proper, high-performance, shock-absorbing shoes designed for people who stood for 12 hours straight without complaint. "You've been limping," he said before she could speak. "You try to hide it, but I notice." She stared at them, throat tight. "You watch closer than I thought." "I want to know what matters to you," he said, "even if it's just your feet." Juliette had been prepared for another apology, another bouquet of words trying to smooth the sharp edges of his silence. But this was something different, something quieter. Something that didn't ask for forgiveness but earned it. She looked up. "I'm making lemon curd. I've never had it." "Then you're about to be enlightened." As she worked, he leaned against the prep table, watching her movements like he was learning a language. She handed him a spoonful of the still warm filling, and he tasted it without hesitation. "That's intense." "Too much?" "No, just unexpected." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before she spoke again. "Why didn't you tell me about your mother's estate before?" He set the spoon down. "Because it's messy. And I'm not used to letting people into the mess. You think I can't handle complicated? I think I've spent years building walls so high that even I forgot what was behind them." She paused, then said, "Did she live nearby?" "In Connecticut. She remarried after my father passed. Her new husband was not someone I wanted to deal with, but when she got sick, I kept my distance longer than I should have." Juliette leaned against the counter. "Do you regret it?" "Every day." She didn't try to fix it, didn't offer platitudes or sympathy. Just stood there, grounded like she always did. Eventually, he reached across the counter and took her flour-dusted hand. "Will you come with me?" She blinked. "Where?" "To the benefit tomorrow night. It's for a literacy foundation. I'm a sponsor. It'll be formal. You need a date." "I want you there." She hesitated. I don't exactly blend in at black tie galas. I don't want you to blend in. Juliette looked down at their hands. What do I wear? I'll take care of it. The next morning, a garment bag arrived at her door. No note, no label, but inside was a midnight blue gown that shimmered faintly when the light caught it. Classic, elegant, nothing flashy. The kind of dress that didn't try to be noticed, it simply was. Juliette stared at it for a long time before pulling her phone and calling a name she never thought she'd dial. Her cousin Elise, who once worked in wardrobe for a local theater. I need help with hair and makeup, she said simply. Tonight. That evening, when Sebastian's driver opened the car door, Juliette stepped out into the city's most exclusive event space and immediately felt like she didn't belong. Sebastian met her at the entrance, black tux perfectly tailored, bow tie crisp. But when he saw her, something in his expression shifted, not awe, not surprise, but something deeper, recognition. You look like trouble, he said quietly. I feel like an imposter. You're not. As they walked arm in arm into the glittering foyer, Juliette noticed the way heads turned. Not because of the gown or the man beside her, but because she didn't belong to this world, and she wasn't pretending to. Sebastian noticed too. Ignore them. I'm trying. He guided her through the crowd gently, introducing her to people with names she'd only ever seen in headlines. Juliette nodded politely, smiled when expected, but never let go of his arm. After dinner, as a string quartet played something delicate in the background, she leaned toward him. Do you ever feel like you're performing? All the time, he said without hesitation. But not with you. They stepped outside to a balcony that overlooked the skyline. The air was cool, the city glittering beneath them. You know, Juliette said softly, I used to dream about moments like this. He looked at her. And now I realized they were never about the view. Sebastian turned fully toward her then. I've spent years chasing things that look good on paper deals, properties, people who say what I want to hear. But nothing has ever felt as real as a sunrise in your bakery with flour on your cheek. Juliette searched his face, her heartbeat uneven. Why me? Because you see me, he said. Not the name, not the money, just me. She opened her mouth, but the words caught somewhere between her ribs. So instead, she stepped closer and rested her head against his chest. He wrapped his arms around her, and for a long moment, they didn't speak. Inside, the music swelled. Champagne clinked. Laughter floated across the marble floors. But on that balcony, surrounded by glittering glass and the hum of the city, Juliette realized something she hadn't dared admit, not even to herself. She was falling. And this time, it wasn't a fantasy. The first time Sebastian walked into her apartment, Juliette realized she had never once imagined him there. It was nothing like the penthouse suites he lived in or the glass towers he called home. Her place was on the third floor of a walk-up above a bookstore, with uneven wood floors and books stacked in corners because she'd run out of shelves. Her couch had a threadbare throw draped over the back, and the kitchen was barely wide enough for two people to stand side by side. But he didn't hesitate. He stepped inside, glanced around once, and said, I like it. Smells like cinnamon and stories. Juliette gestured toward the couch. It's not much, but it's where I remember who I am. Sebastian sat, loosening his tie. That's exactly why I wanted to see it. She brought him tea in mismatched mugs, and he held his with both hands, leaning back like it was the first time he'd sat still all week. Next month, he said, I'm supposed to be in Milan. There's a summit. Investors, developers, a whole week of speeches and handshakes. Do you want to go? She asked, curling up beside him. Not really. Then don't, he glanced over. You make it sound so simple. It is, she said. You just forgot along the way. Later, when he walked her to the window and looked out over the quiet street, he said, I've been thinking. That sounds dangerous. He gave her a sideways look. I want you to come with me, to Milan. No, to everything. Juliette's breath caught. Sebastian, I'm not asking you to give up what you've built. I know what that bakery means to you, but I also know I want you beside me when I wake up. And not just on rooftops and balconies. You want me to move in with you. I want you to choose a life where you don't have to shoulder everything alone. She looked down at her chipped mug, then out the window where the streetlight flickered above the bookstore awning. I've spent years building something no one believed in, she said quietly. Every time it got hard, I told myself to keep going because one day someone would see the work and not just the flower on my clothes. He reached for her hand. I see it. I see you. The next morning, he was back at the bakery before sunrise, not in a suit, not with a driver, just in jeans and a sweatshirt, sleeves pushed up, hair still damp from the shower. He let himself in with the spare key she'd finally given him, and when she came downstairs, he was already prepping batter. "You're using the wrong bowl," she said, amused. "I'm improvising." She leaned against the doorframe. "Why are you here this early?" "Because I want to see what it's like to build something with you." They worked side by side, not speaking much, just moving in rhythm. There was no need to fill the space. It was already full with the scent of vanilla, the warmth of the oven, the quiet comfort of shared purpose. Later that week, she found herself standing inside a commercial kitchen 3 times the size of hers, staring at a lease agreement with her name on it. Sebastian leaned against the wall. "You said you wanted to expand someday. This is beyond expansion. This is a whole different planet. It's yours if you want it." She turned to face him. "This isn't just a gift. No, it's a partnership. You run it. You own it. I'm just the guy who believes in you enough to help you skip 5 years of slow growth." She studied him for a long moment. "You're not doing this because you think I'll say yes to everything else if I say yes to this. No, I'm doing this because I know the world needs more of what you create. And because I want to see you win." Juliette stepped forward, took the pen from his hand, and signed her name. That evening, he took her to a small rooftop garden in the center of the city. Not a restaurant, not a gala. Just an open space above a library, with fairy lights strung between planters and a single table set for 2. "I used to come here alone," he said, "before the suits and the meetings, when it all felt too loud." She looked around. "It's beautiful. I wanted the first night of your new chapter to start somewhere that meant something." They sat beneath the stars, eating food he'd had delivered from her favorite hidden cafe, the one with the tomato soup she always craved on rainy days. He knew that. Of course he did. When the meal was done, he stood, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a small velvet box. Juliette's breath hitched. "I'm not asking today," he said, opening it to reveal a ring that shimmered under the lights. "Because I know you still have things you want to do first. But I want you to know this is where I see us going." She stared at the ring, then up at him. "You're giving me a promise." "I'm giving you time," he said, "and a future with no pressure, just love." Juliette stood, closed the box gently, and slid it back into his pocket. Then she kissed him slow and certain, surrounded by the hush of the city and the scent of basil from the garden beds. 3 months later, the new bakery opened its doors. It was called Morning and Dorne, not because his name needed to be on anything else, but because they had built it together. Because every morning now started with him beside her, barefoot in her kitchen, pouring coffee into a mug he'd claimed as his. And every customer who walked through the doors tasted something that wasn't just butter and sugar. They tasted love. Real, grounded, earned. Juliette never stopped baking. Sebastian never stopped showing up. And together, they built a life that didn't need to be explained to anyone but each other. Juliette stood in the middle of the new kitchen, alone, surrounded by polished chrome, untouched marble counters, and the faint scent of fresh paint. The official grand opening was only hours away, and the space still felt like a dream. She adjusted the collar of her button-down blouse, the one she only ever wore for press days, and turned slowly in place, taking it all in. Behind her, the heavy glass door clicked open. "You're early," she said without turning. "I couldn't stay away." Sebastian's voice was warm, low, threaded with something quiet and certain. "I wanted to see you before the chaos." She turned to face him. He was dressed in a slate gray jacket over a black crewneck, more relaxed than usual, but his expression was focused, present. "I still can't believe this is real," she said. He moved closer, slipping his hands into his pockets. "Can I show you something?" Juliette hesitated. "Right now," he nodded. "You've got 2 hours until the press shows up. Trust me." They stepped into the waiting car outside his, of course, and he gave the driver a brief nod. They didn't speak much during the ride. She watched him instead, the clean line of his jaw, the way his fingers tapped silently against his knee. He looked like he was holding something back. When the car stopped, she didn't recognize the street. It was quieter than the others, tucked between two old townhouses. Sebastian stepped out, then opened her door himself. This way. They walked into a narrow brick building with ivy crawling up the side. Inside, it opened into a cozy, sunlit space lined with bookshelves and wide windows. The smell of paper and ink lingered in the air. Juliette froze. "This is the bookstore under my apartment. I bought it," he said. She turned to him, eyes wide. "Why would you?" "Because the space above it is where I first saw you outside the bakery. You were on your fire escape, drinking from that chipped yellow mug. You didn't see me, but I saw you, and I knew I wanted to be part of your world." She blinked, stunned. "You saw me before we met. I came to the bakery the next day," he said. After circling the block 3 times like a coward, she laughed, breath catching. "You bought a bookstore for me. I renovated the apartment upstairs too. Not to change it, just to fix the plumbing, reinforce the floors, make it safer. I wanted to preserve it, because that's where you started. And if someday you want to move back there or keep it as a place of your own, it'll be waiting." Juliette walked to the back wall where a new staircase had been added. She climbed halfway up, paused, then turned back to him. "You remembered the mug. You dropped it once," he said. "I saw it broken in the trash and replaced it." Her throat tightened. "You did all of this without telling me." "I didn't want it to be a transaction," he said. "I wanted it to be a gift, something that didn't come with strings or expectations. Just a place that will always be yours." Juliette walked back down slowly and stopped in front of him. "You know what the crazy thing is?" "What?" "I don't need the apartment anymore," she said, "because wherever you are, that's home." He didn't speak. He just reached into his coat pocket, pulled out the ring again, and held it out without a word. This time, she didn't hesitate. She reached for it, slid it onto her finger herself, and whispered, "Yes." The press event was chaos. Journalists swarmed the sidewalk, and the line of guests stretched down the block. But Juliette didn't feel overwhelmed. She stood at the front window, flanked by her staff in their crisp new aprons, and when she cut the ribbon, Sebastian stood just behind her, close enough that their shoulders touched. She didn't give a speech. She didn't need one. The bakery spoke for itself. The scent of cardamom and honey, the warmth of the space, the photos on the wall from her first tiny kitchen. Every detail had her mark. Every inch told their story. Later that night, when the last guest had gone and the lights were dimmed, she found Sebastian in the back office, flipping through the original lease of her first storefront. "You kept this?" she asked. "I keep everything that matters." She crossed the room and sat in his lap, resting her head against his shoulder. "I used to think I had to do it all alone," she said. "That letting someone in would mean giving something up. And now I know that the right person doesn't ask you to give anything up. They build it with you." He touched her cheek. "You're not the only one who changed." She looked up. "What do you mean?" "I used to be afraid of needing anyone. I thought it made me weak, vulnerable. And now I know that needing you is the strongest thing I've ever done." She kissed him soft, slow, and when she pulled back, her eyes were bright. "Let's get married in the garden where you almost proposed." He blinked. "Almost. You said you weren't asking that day, but I wanted to." "Well, now I'm asking." He laughed, full and unguarded. "You're proposing?" "I'm serious." "So am I," he said, pulling her close. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." 6 weeks later, surrounded by friends and the scent of rosemary and lemon from the garden beds, they said their vows beneath the same string lights that had hung above their first real dinner together. Juliette wore a simple ivory gown with a ribbon tied at her waist. Sebastian wore a 3-piece suit in midnight blue. There was no press, no spectacle. Just vows exchanged in hushed voices, hands clasped tight, and 2 hearts that had found a place to rest. She didn't cry until the first dance when the music played soft and low, and he whispered, "You're still the girl with flower on her cheek. And you're still the man who saw me before I saw myself." That night, they returned to the apartment above the bookstore. The lights were already on. Her yellow mug sat on the counter, next to a teapot warming on the stove. Sebastian wrapped his arms around her from behind, kissing her shoulder as she leaned back into him. "I was thinking," she said, "maybe we keep both places. The apartment and the loft downtown, for mornings or nights, for all the in-betweens." He smiled against her skin. "Whatever you want." And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the hum of something new and the comfort of something lasting, Juliette knew she had everything she needed. Love, not built on rescue or fantasy, but on choice. And every morning after, whether in the bakery or the garden or curled together on the couch with tea and silence, they chose each other again, always.